Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we are diving into something, well, pretty fundamental, I think, to how organizations get new ideas, new capabilities out into the hands of users. We're talking about the continuous delivery pipeline.
Yep, the CDP.
And we've got some really insightful source material on this, specifically looking at excerpts that explore the CDP within a framework, something like Safe Agile.
That's right. It really is a core concept. It bridges that gap between, the big strategy and the actual execution on the ground. Super crucial for anyone trying to move value to customers faster, more reliably.
Absolutely. So our mission today really is to go beyond just like the dictionary definition. We want to really get into these sources, understand what this continuous delivery pipeline is for sure, break down its core components, but maybe more importantly, surface the key insights from the material about how it genuinely helps companies deliver value faster, more predictably, and, what challenges and opportunities it flags up.
Yeah, pull out those crucial nuggets because it affects anyone involved in that journey, from having an idea to actually making an impact with users.
Exactly.
So what's immediately clear from the sources is their definition. They frame the continuous delivery pipeline, the CDP, as essentially the engine room. It represents the workflows, the activities, the automation, all the stuff required to guide new functionality from that initial spark, that ideation phase,
Right.
all the way through to being ready for an on-demand release.
And they really hammer home its highest priority right from the get-go, which I think is quite telling. It's all about satisfying the customer
Yes.
through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. It's not positioned just as a technical pipeline. It's framed as a value pipeline, focused squarely on that end customer.
Exactly. And that word continuous is key. But, the sources clarify it's not this rigid mandate for like daily releases or anything. It needs to align with what the market actually demands. So continuous could mean daily, sure, but it should also be weekly, monthly, whatever cadence actually makes sense for getting that valuable software out when customers need it.
That's a really important distinction, isn't it? It's about having the capability and the flexibility, not just churning things out for the sake of speed.
Right.
And they contrast this CDP approach with older, maybe more traditional practices, the ones involving infrequent releases of huge monolithic changes.
Oh, yeah, the big bang releases,
Oh.
always risky, always slow.
Exactly. The CDP, by contrast, is designed specifically to enable decoupled independent releases of smaller components, smaller features.
Which is just a massive shift in thinking and practice.
Right.
By breaking things down, making those releases independent, you can drastically accelerate the development flow.
Right.
And this allows for a much, much faster response to what the market needs, what customers are asking for. And the sources mention that typically each Agile release train, or RTA, usually manages its own pipeline. That gives the teams the autonomy and speed they need.
Right. That focus on small batches, frequent updates. That really seems to be the core principle here. Now, the sources lay out the CDP as having 4 fundamental elements. They're often described sequentially, but, well, as we'll probably get into, it's really more of a cycle, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. The 4 elements they name are continuous exploration, continuous integration, continuous deployment, and a release on demand. These represent the kind of major phases of the value stream.
Okay, let's maybe start at the beginning then. Continuous exploration. What are teams really focusing on in this first element?
So the deep dive here is all about figuring out what actually needs to be built. What solves a real customer problem. It often kicks off using things like design thinking
Okay.
to really empathize with users, understand the market problems, uncover those genuine customer needs.
So before anyone even thinks about writing code, you're really trying to deeply understand the problem space.
Precisely. Then it moves into analyzing and researching to clarify potential requirements. This can be defining what a minimum viable product, an MVP, might look like, or maybe detailing specific marketable features. The outcome, really, is defining and prioritizing those capabilities and features, getting them refined enough so they can be placed in the RT backlog, ready for teams to actually start building.
Got it. So figure out the problem, explore potential solutions, define and prioritize the best ideas. That exploration then feeds into the second element, continuous integration. This sounds like where the rubber really hits the road on the building side.
It absolutely is. Continuous integration, or CI, is centered around implementing, building, testing, and validating those features that were defined and prioritized back in exploration.
What does integrating really mean here, though? Is it more than just developers writing code?
Oh yeah, definitely. The sources talk about applying design thinking tools again, but here it's more about refining the features in the user stories so the teams can build them effectively. And crucially, it involves seeking user feedback on prototypes or even partially build solutions early and often.
So you're on the right track before you invest too much effort.
Exactly, before investing fully. Then, of course, comes the implementation teams, build the features, and integrate their code frequently into a shared repository. We're talking multiple times a day, ideally.
Wow. Okay.
And the really vital part is the validation piece, running automated tests at various levels, unit tests, component tests, and then validating the whole integrated solution in a staging environment, one that mimics production as closely as possible.
That step feels critical, testing the integrated solution before it gets anywhere near live users. It's like having a full dress rehearsal before the big show,
That's a great analogy.
which transitions us pretty smoothly to continuous deployment. So CI builds and validates it in staging. CD is about getting those validated changes actually into the production environment.
That's exactly right.
Right.
The focus here is getting every change that successfully passes through continuous integration deployed all the way to production, and then immediately verifying that it works correctly in that live environment.
Every single change,
Right.
even if it's maybe not quite ready for users to see yet.
Yes, that's the philosophy. Make deployment a routine, low-risk, almost non-event. The sources mention key activities, like the automated deployment itself, obviously, then verifying features function as expected post-deployment,
Okay.
and then, critically, monitoring performance and usage metrics right there in production. This monitoring is absolutely non-negotiable, so you can quickly respond if something unexpected happens,
Respond how?
either by rolling back the change automatically or fixing it forward very rapidly.
Okay, so continuous exploration figures out what to build. Continuous integration builds and tests it. Continuous deployment gets it to production and verifies it's technically sound there. But that's still not the end of the story, is it? The fourth element is release on demand. This feels distinct from just deploying.
It absolutely is distinct, and this distinction is a really key insight from the sources, I think. Continuous deployment gets the changes into the production environment, technically live. But release on demand is the separate decision, the separate process of making that value available and visible to customers. And that's based on market needs or business timing.
Okay. So deployment is more of a technical activity, but release is a strategic, business-driven decision. Is that fair?
Essentially, yes. The sources highlight activities here, like controlling the timing of the release, deciding when is the optimal moment in the market cycle, or based on strategic priorities, to actually make the features live for users. It involves carefully managing the business risks, and the technical risks, too, associated with exposing those new changes to customers. And it includes incorporating activities that preserve the solution's stability after it's been released. Things like providing support, gathering feedback immediately. You might, for example, deploy a feature on a Tuesday, but maybe not actually release it, not turn it on for users until Friday, using techniques like feature toggles or flags.
That separation makes so much sense. It decouples the technical rhythm from the business rhythm, giving the business control over when the value actually hits the customer, even if the tech teams are continuously pushing verified changes right into production.
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned earlier, and the sources seem to emphasize this, it's not strictly linear. They describe the pipeline less like a simple sequence and more as a learning cycle.
Yeah, this is a really important reframing, I think. While the elements have those sequential-sounding names, exploration, integration, deployment, release, the actual work functions, much more like a continuous loop, it's a cycle
A cycle of what?
of establishing hypotheses, basically educated guesses, about what customers need or want, building solutions based on those hypotheses, and then, crucially, measuring the impact and learning from the results.
So it's that classic hypothesize, build, measure, learn loop in practical application.
Precisely. And the sources really emphasize that RTs, the teams on the train, they aren't waiting for one phase to completely finish for everything before starting the next bit. They're actively working through aspects of continuous exploration, continuous integration and demonstration, continuous deployment, and preparing for release on demand in parallel
Wow.
during every program increment, even within every single iteration or sprint.
That paints a much more dynamic picture than just, passing a baton from one phase to the next. It's more like keeping multiple plates spinning simultaneously, constantly iterating and learning across the whole flow.
Exactly. And to keep those plates spinning smoothly, you first really need to understand where your current process is at. The sources point out something quite fundamental. Every organization already has a delivery pipeline of some sort.
Right, even if they don't call it that.
Exactly. But often, these existing pipelines are largely manual, they lack automation, and they contain significant, often hidden, delays and bottlenecks. Value just sits there waiting.
Hidden delays, that sounds incredibly frustrating. Like, value is produced, but it's just sitting on a shelf somewhere waiting to be delivered.
That's often exactly what's happening. So the first most fundamental step to improving that flow of value, according to these sources, is mapping the current pipeline, making it visible.
Why mapping?
Because it helps you pinpoint where those bottlenecks, those major opportunities for improvement actually lie. You can't fix what you can't see.
And mapping isn't just drawing boxes on a whiteboard, presumably. They give us specific metrics to kind of shine a light on the flow, don't they?
Yes, but they highlight three really critical flow metrics. First, there's active time. That's the time work is actually being done within a specific step. The time developers are coding, testers are testing, operations are deploying.
Okay, the hands-on time.
Right. Then there's wait time. This is the time work spends between the steps when nothing is actively happening to it. It's waiting for approval, waiting for an environment to be ready, waiting for someone else to finish their part.
Okay, so active time is sort of value-add work, and wait time is essentially waste or delay in the system.
Broadly speaking, yes. That's a good way to think about it. And the third metric is percent complete and accurate, often shortened to %. This is a measure of quality flowing between steps.
Quality? How so?
It measures the percentage of work exiting one step that the next step can immediately process without needing any rework, clarification, or correction from the previous step.
Ah, okay, so a low per CNA means the next step gets work that's faulty or incomplete, and they have to spend time fixing it or sending it back.
Precisely. It tells you how much time is being wasted due to errors or ambiguities introduced earlier in the process, stuff having to go backwards. And the sources offer a really powerful insight based on these metrics. While improving active time, making the coding or testing faster, might seem like the intuitive thing to focus on.
Yeah, that's what I think.
The major delay points, the steps with high wait time, are often the most significant source of overall delay in the entire pipeline. Reducing that wait time is frequently the quickest and most impactful way to optimize the flow of value from end to end.
Wow, that's a really counterintuitive nugget, isn't it? It might feel like you need to make the coding happen faster, but the real win could be reducing the time the finished code just sits there waiting to be deployed or tested.
Absolutely. It's like being stuck in a traffic jam.
Yeah.
The problem isn't usually the top speed of the cars, it's the waiting time at the clogged intersections or bottlenecks.
Good analogy.
And addressing steps with a low per CNA is equally crucial. The sources clearly show how poor quality introduced early on creates these massive rework loops later down the line. That consumes valuable time and prevents teams from focusing on delivering new value. The kind of maps they describe visually highlight exactly where these quality issues and delays are just bleeding time and effort.
Visualizing those metrics on a map. Yeah, I can see how you'd suddenly see exactly where the flow is choking. It's like putting your entire process under a microscope.
Definitely. And once you've mapped it, you've measured it, you've identified those problem areas, the sources introduce the RT Kanban as a key tool for actually managing that flow day to day.
Okay, I've seen Kanban boards used by individual development teams for sure. How is an RT Kanban different when we're talking about the whole pipeline?
Well, this Kanban is specifically designed to visualize and manage the flow of features, those larger chunks of value, through the entire continuous delivery pipeline, potentially across multiple teams that make up the RT. Product management, key stakeholders, they use it to monitor the progress of features from that initial exploration phase all the way through to release.
So it's a higher level view than a team board.
Exactly. And what's a really key practice when using this ART Kanban, highlighted in the material,
Go on.
setting work in process or WIP limits. This is presented as incredibly important.
Why WIP limits?
Well, limiting the number of items that can be in each stage of the Kanban board simultaneously improves overall efficiency because it forces the system to finish work before pulling new work in. Stop starting, start finishing.
Ah.
And this discipline naturally exposes where the bottlenecks are. If a particular stage consistently hits its WIP limit and work starts backing up behind it, it's a clear signal that that stage is the constraint. It helps you find and then hopefully fix the bottleneck.
That makes total sense. Like if you limit how many features can be in testing at once and that column fills up and stays full, your testing capacity or maybe the testing process itself is the bottleneck holding everything else up.
Precisely.
What are the typical stages you might see on an RT Kanban board like this?
The sources illustrate some typical stages. Things like a funnel for new ideas, analyzing, where ideas are explored, ready for refined and prioritized features, ready to be built, implementing, where teams are actively building,
Okay.
validating on staging for that end-to-end testing, deploying to production, then releasing where it becomes visible to customers, and finally done. You can see how these stages map back quite nicely to those four core elements of the CDP we discussed.
Yeah, you can. It provides that shared visual control point for the entire flow for everyone involved, business, tech, everyone.
Right.
Now, of course, none of this just happens magically by drawing a Kanban board. The sources talk quite a bit about the essential foundation needed to support building and optimizing this kind of CDP.
Yeah, that's crucial. Implementing and perfecting a CDP isn't trivial. It requires specific capabilities, skills, tools, spanning the entire value stream, really, from business strategy through development, testing, and into operations. And DevOps methods and culture are presented as the ideal approach for providing this kind of integrated support.
How so?
Because DevOps enables the flow of complex solutions with that necessary high collaboration between historically siloed groups, and it encourages those rapid learning cycles we talked about.
Okay, DevOps is still a pretty broad term, though. The sources break it down further, don't they, with something called the CalMR approach. Can you walk us through what that acronym represents?
Sure. CalMR is basically a mnemonic. It outlines the critical aspects of a successful DevOps culture and practice, the things needed to really enable the CDP to flourish. So the C stands for culture.
Culture.
Yeah, fostering a truly collaborative environment. Getting development, operations, business, security, everyone working together, supporting continuous delivery, and taking shared responsibility for the whole value stream.
So really breaking down those traditional silos.
Exactly, that's fundamental. The A is for automation. Automating repetitive manual tasks wherever it makes sense. Building, testing, deployment, monitoring. The goal is to reduce errors, increase speed, and free people up for higher value work.
Makes sense.
The L is for lean flow. Applying lean principles to optimize that value stream. Focusing on eliminating waste, like that wait time we discussed, reducing batch sizes, managing queue lengths effectively. It ties directly back to those flow metrics.
Okay, so the metrics help inform how you apply lean flow principles.
Precisely. They guide your efforts. The M is for measurement. Collecting and analyzing data and metrics throughout the entire pipeline, not just flow metrics, but system performance, user behavior, everything. Using that data to understand performance, identify issues proactively, and guide those continuous improvement efforts. You can't improve what you don't measure. And finally, the R is for recovery. This is about building systems and practices that allow for quick detection of issues or failures in production, and importantly, the ability to rapidly recover or roll back changes if something does go wrong. Minimizing the impact of failure is key to being able to move fast safely.
Culture, automation, lean flow, measurement, recovery, KLMR. That's a really solid framework, actually, for understanding the underlying capabilities needed to make that continuous delivery pipeline function effectively and reliably over the long haul.
Yeah, it provides that crucial environmental support system for all the technical workflows and activities within the pipeline itself.
So let's bring this all back to you, the listener. Why should you care about understanding this continuous delivery pipeline? What's the takeaway?
Well, I mean, whether you're prepping for a meeting, trying to get up to speed in your field, maybe just inherently curious about how modern organizations actually, efficiently turn ideas into real user value, the CDP is a pretty central concept these days.
Right. Yeah, these sources really lay out a very structured, yet I think quite flexible way to think about that entire journey, from the initial idea right through to the impact it has. And it's not just about getting things done faster, is it? It's deeply focused on quality, on reducing risk, on predictability, and on building that crucial continuous learning loop we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. It's really about operationalizing that highest priority they stated right at the beginning.
Yeah.
Consistently satisfying the customer through the early and continuous delivery of genuinely valuable software.
So we've taken a pretty comprehensive journey today, haven't we? Through the continuous delivery pipeline. We looked at understanding its core purpose. We broke down those four key elements from exploration all the way to releasing on demand. We saw how it functions as a continuous learning cycle, not just linear. We talked about mapping and measuring its flow using those key metrics like active time, wait time, CNA.
Identifying those often hidden bottlenecks, especially the wait times.
Right. And managing the process visually with tools like the RT Kanban using WIP limits, and then exploring those essential supporting capabilities outlined in DevOps and that Calamar approach.
Yeah, we've seen how all these pieces kind of work together,
Yeah.
drawing from the sources to create a system, a capability for reliably delivering valuable functionality out to users.
Right. And ultimately, as you said, it all ties back to that core benefit highlighted throughout the material, satisfying the customer through the early and continuous delivery of valuable software.
Which I think raises a really interesting, maybe provocative question for you, the listener, to consider as you look at the processes happening around you in your own context. Thinking about those key flow metrics we discussed, that active time, the wait time, and the percent complete and accurate, where might the most significant, yet perhaps currently hidden opportunities for faster, smoother value delivery exist in the workflows you encounter day to day? Where's the waiting? Where's the rework?